For many in Ottawa today, October 27th, 1975 is a forgotten chapter in the city's history. But for the families of Kim Rabot, Mark Huff, and Robert Poulin, and the classmates who grieved them at Glebe Collegiate Institute and St. Pius X High School, it's a time that's left lasting scars.
This doesn't happen in Ottawa. And then when you get the sordid details of what happened to Kim, you think, my God, why?
That he had done that, set the house on fire, gets on his bike and ambles over to Pius with the gun. It was like you were in a horror film, except it was real.
Yesterday in Ottawa, Rob Poulin took a shotgun into his school, fired into a classroom, and he stepped outside the classroom and killed himself, again, with a gun. Several were critically injured.
And so there was that masses praying for them. Most recovered with the exception of, unfortunately, Mark.
Mark had an open casket, and you have to remember that Mark was shot in the head. They wanted to show people the damage that firearms could do.
I remember that debate, and it continues after every shooting. And I always remember thinking, yes, but the worst death was Kim.
The shooting was only one half of the tragedy that unfolded on October 27th, 1975. That same morning, Robert Poulin lured Kim Rabau, a family acquaintance, to his basement bedroom, where he raped her, stabbed her, and left her for dead before making his way to the school.
What he did to her was sort of very focal point of his, whatever it is he was going through, his rage, his misogyny. It's important to remember her as a human being.
My name is Fred May, and in October 1975, I was a friend and classmate of Kim Rabot's at Glebe Collegiate. She had a really, really, good laugh. When you would tell her something intelligent that was funny, Kim would get it and laugh. Whenever I did go back to school, to look over the empty chair in front of me. That was really a bit much. One thing that I do think of is how Robert Poulin got his hands on the weapons that he did.
Poulin had acquired the shotgun at a giant tiger. So basically, if you're of a certain age, you could walk into a department store or a hardware store, as Poulin did, and acquire a shotgun.
I do remember going into stores and you'd see the rifles and guns that, behind the sports counter, just the free and ready access to something as lethal as that.
But then 50 years ago, that was the way it was.
It occurred not so long ago.
It was a shooting and suicide at Ottawa High School a month ago which led to this. From that tragedy came a call for citizens, to give up their guns, and some responded. 180 weapons were turned into the police department. Some were ugly Saturday night specials, others finely balanced collector's items. Now, that's an extraordinary thing, Mr. Mayor, for citizens to come forward. I suppose it couldn't happen in any other city but a Canadian city. What gave you the idea to make this call?
Well, I think that, it's not a publicity stunt. It was a call for people to turn in their firearms, which are, dangerous weapons.
Well, did you feel that the situation was out of control here, that there were too many firearms in the hands of the public, or what?
There are a number of people who are frightened because there are guns in their home.
My only thing that I did to cope was to make sure my dad got rid of all the guns in the house. He wanted to display a couple over the mantle, and I said, no guns.
Police invited the media in the hopes the coverage would pry more weapons from the hands of the public.
I'm glad they did that. It probably saved lives, because a lot of times things like suicides or even murders sometimes are crimes of opportunity.
But it's only the beginning. It can't be a one-shot deal. And hopefully, a new legislation with gun control will assist it as well.
There was already lots of concern about increasing violent crime in Canada. In the spring of 1975, you had the Brampton Centennial shooting, in which a young man entered a school.
And I heard another shot, and I turned around, and there was one guy shot in the elbow.
A few months after that, in the fall of 1975, you have the Poulin shooting incident at St. Pius High School.
When I finally got into the classroom, needless to say, the students were afraid to open the door, and it was locked because they felt it was the gunman again. But I shouted to them, and I think when they heard my voice, they let me in.
Between the kind of rising murder rate and these infamous incidents, this led the federal government to act. They created Canada's first licensing regime. So basically, if you wanted to purchase a a rifle or a shotgun, going forward you're going to have to acquire what was called a Firearms and Acquisition Certificate, or FAC.
That licensing system, still in place today, was meant in part to keep guns out of the hands of those who shouldn't have them.
We live in a society where gun violence is still news, and it's still relatively unusual. School shootings, very much so. So I think it had an effect that in the long term has proven beneficial to Canadian society.
Guy Kenville, CBC News, Ottawa.